Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama Bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
American tourists, and he also had dealings with Omar Sheikh, the man who murdered Osama Bin Laden. Now, I know that having dealings with people does not necessarily mean...
I think he died, he perished some years ago, and I think this was a story which was created, and I think this was, because they themselves are saying, I mean, their versions, nobody would want to believe these versions. Initially they said that he fought back and there was a firefight. President Obama himself said that in his initial statement, and now they say that he had no weapons, he didn't do any of those things. Then ISI says that he was living there for the last 5 years. So, and they said that we have informed the CIA and the American partners in 2009 about it. So there are so many versions floating around. As far as I think he had, even if he's not killed or if he didn't die a natural death, I think it was totally irrelevant to the operations of al-Qaeda. And I think it was quite futile to have gone and killed him. But I still doubt the story which was given out by the American media and by the American administration.
All right. You believe he died a few years ago in the United States?
Yeah, I don't think he was there. I think it was probably somebody else.
Okay.
Why did they not take him alive?
Out that says that Osama bin Laden is living in Tehran. Is Osama bin Laden in Tehran?
Your question is laughable.
Why?
The U.S. government has invaded Afghanistan in order to arrest bin Laden. They probably know where bin Laden is. If they don't know where bin Laden is, why did they invade? First, they invaded. Then they tried to find out where he is. Is that logical? Do you think this is logical?
What I think is that you didn't answer my question. Is he in Tehran or not?
Our position is quite clear. Some journalists have said bin Laden is in Iran. These words don't have legal value. Our position towards Afghanistan and against terrorism is quite clear.
Is it true or not?
Maybe you know, but I don't know.
I'm asking you, you're the president of Iran.
I don't know such a thing. You are giving news which is very strange.
So let me ask it a different way. If you did know that Osama bin Laden was in Tehran, would you show him hospitality? Would you expel him? Would you arrest him?
I heard that Osama bin Laden is in Washington, D.C.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. He's there because he was a previous partner of Mr. Bush. They were colleagues, in fact, in the old days. You know that. They worked together. Mr. bin Laden never cooperated with Iran, but he cooperated with Mr. Bush.
Well, let's look at the situation. They said he was on a dialysis machine 10 years ago. Experts have said the disease he suffered from is generally fatal within 2 years. How did he manage to survive 10?
Well, we don't even know. They don't even know for sure if he had one kidney or not. You know, so let's move on. Let's talk politics because I want to talk about.
Let's ask this.
Go ahead.
How do we kill a guy that we never indict?
President Obama addressed the nation late Sunday evening to say that just hours before, Osama bin Laden had been killed in the middle of a major populated city in a palace compound. My friends, this is a complete and total hoax, and we predicted with total precision, with inside sources, going back more than 8 years ago, exactly what would happen. It's on record that Steve Pachinik, who worked as the top deputy to Henry Kissinger, and who also is a high-level Council on Foreign Relations member, was interviewed back in April of 2002 and said that bin Laden was dead and that was on ice, and that in the future he would be used at a politically expedient time to bolster the government in the eyes of the people. Mr. Pachinik, extremely high-powered. Here's the quote. "I worked with Osama bin Laden," Pachinik told Jones, adding that he later turned terrorist hunter during subsequent administrations. And then he went on from that point, this is just a few months after 9/11, early 2002, to break this down. Now, I was the first to ever have an insider come out and say this, Then Madeleine Albright in 2003, on December 17th, went on Fox News program and said that he was dead and on ice, and that the Bush administration was thinking about rolling him out during the 2004 election if they needed it. But then because of that coverage, the inside baseball was they didn't. Now, even before she went public, a year and a half after I first broke this news, I had a White House source here in Austin, Texas. You know, a lot of folks live here in Austin, but we're also in the Bush administration because they came from Texas. Bush had just been governor here. And I was told by an extremely high-level White House source this information. Separately, I then confirmed through another White House source here in Austin through a separate party. Ladies and gentlemen, this was completely staged. All right, there's the whole CIA background of Osama bin Laden. There's the fact that it comes out that Anwar al-Awlaki, his number 2, running all these terror attacks, is hanging out secretly at the Pentagon. There's the government lying about WMDs and our destroyers being attacked to get us into Vietnam. You know this history of major hoaxes being run. But notice when all this came out, then I'll go through some anomalies, just the tip of the iceberg. This all came out right at the time that Obama's approval rating was dropping like a rock, an all-time low this far into a president's administration, as the dollar's dropping, as support for Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and the drone attacks in Pakistan was imploding, right as the Pakistanis were threatening to kick the U.S. out of Pakistan and to kick their drones out. Right as this happens, there's this big propaganda victory, and what do? They take the body and throw it in the ocean, they say. Do you really believe that? No one is buying that. I've been listening to talk radio last night, this morning, even conservative stations that want to buy into this propaganda. No one is buying that. They've thrown his body in, but don't worry, they have a DNA test and they have a face scan so they know it's him. This is the same government where the CIA agents last year admitted in the Washington Post that they created fake bin Laden videos. This is the same government that's constantly caught lying. But conveniently, his body is now out in the ocean somewhere, buried at sea. But it gets worse. Last night, as soon as this was announced, it was all over U.S. TV, British TV, European papers, fake photos. And as soon as I saw it, I sent text messages to Paul Watson and others and said, look into this. This is the same fake bin Laden dead photo that's photoshopped of him that we saw years ago. And so digging into this, we've learned they claim that they've killed him 9 separate times. But obviously this is the big presidential announcement. They claim that they've killed other al-Qaeda operatives over and over again. They're training you to accept this type of garbage. So we've got that information that they've killed him 9 times.
The issue now is we have brought to the forefront at a time when America is in deep peril economically, as Alex Jones has correctly explained to you. We are in deep peril because we are in 2 wars, of which I have no idea why we're there. And I had warned, even on the Alex Jones show 9 years ago, we will go into Afghanistan and Iraq after the 9/11, and I predicted, and he was correct, Alex Jones, and you see it on your website, that Osama bin Laden would be dead and had been dead for over 7 months. Not because special forces killed him, but because as a physician I had known that the CIA physicians had treated him, and it was on the intelligence roster that he had Marfan syndrome. Now, many of you can look up on the internet Marfan syndrome. It's a disease which is a genetic abnormality which Abraham Lincoln had. And it was the disease of the cataract of the eyes, of the coronary arteries. And what happens in that disease is that you have a very short lifespan. The fact that he had renal dialysis was not an issue of renal stones, which can be cured and is not that serious or life-threatening. But he needed that dialysis machine, so he had to take it with him. It was not an accident that his number 2 man, El-Zawahiri, was a physician. It is not an accident that most leaders of terrorist organizations around the world are physicians. That's why I know them, because we understand our code of ethics and creed. Osama bin Laden died when we went into Afghanistan. General Tommy Franks had stated very clearly that he had died, and he made a slip. Now, we knew he had already died. By that time, by the time we had already gone into Afghanistan, and in Pakistan, we knew he was dead. So the notion, when I came on the radio show in 2002 with Alex Jones, I said, listen, Osama bin Laden's dead. He's dead. There's no question about it. He had Marfan syndrome. It had nothing to do with special forces. He was used in the same way that 9/11 was used to mobilize the emotions and feelings of the American people in order to go to a war that had to be justified through a narrative that Bush Jr. created and Cheney created about the world of war terrorism. Now,
I don't think it's profitable to try to enter too much into the details and the contradictions of this piece of theater that we've been presented with. This is an exercise in mass brainwashing. It is a very serious attempt, I think, to push the world in the direction of general war. The one thing we can say about this pseudo bin Laden, if that's really who he was that he was not the biological bin Laden, as has been pointed out. The biological bin Laden has not been with us for a long time. The original bin Laden, while he was alive, was variously described as a dreamer, a fanatic, an ideologue, a psychotic, a bungler, a misfit, the figurehead of an organization that had been created by the CIA and by British MI6, and who was largely supervised by the MI6 double agent Zawahiri of Egypt, who seems to be the person who runs this all. I think the one thing we can say for sure is that this staged and manufactured incident, and of course it's just like everything else in bin Laden's life, or the so-called bin Laden's life, nothing is proven. There is no proof of any aspect of this entire story. But the one thing you can see from the intent is this is designed to create a strategic confrontation between the United States and Pakistan. And it has already gone very far in that direction. It looks like this raid, as far as we can see, was at least on some level not approved by the Pakistani government. We have former President Musharraf protesting against that. Mm-hmm. We have the hue and cry here in Washington against Pakistan. We have the Chinese government yesterday strongly stating that they're going to support Pakistan in this crisis. We should remember that American policy in that part of the world has absolutely nothing to do with the so-called global war on terror, which is merely a strategic pretext manufactured by the United States. The goal of this all is the dismemberment of Pakistan. Pakistan could serve as an energy corridor between Iran and China, or between India and Europe. And that
wasn't Afghanistan supposed to do that there, Dr. Tarpley?
It's not enough. The Pakistan energy corridor could be created, and the goal of the U.S. policy remains to take the Afghan civil war and to export that into Pakistan and to promote the division along the well-known lines of Punjabis, Sinds, Baluchistan. You've mentioned Rigi, supported by NATO and so forth, and then, of course, Pashtunistan, which is the epicenter of all this. So This is what we can see. And I think the real question is, will this story now manufactured about bin Laden be the equivalent of the Sarajevo assassination of June 22nd, 1914? Are we now in a 6 or 8 or 10-week period between an incident and some cataclysmic geostrategic event, a general war that might grow out of the United States overplaying this attack on Pakistan, when you see that the Chinese are coming forward to offer support? I think the world situation is much more dangerous than most people are aware of in this kind of
we're gonna talk about the strategic pretext that you mentioned.
Funded Al-Qaeda, and now they blame the Muslim religion. Even though Bin Laden was a CIA tactician, they gave him billions of dollars, and they funded his purpose. Fahrenheit 9/11, that's just scratching the surface.